What if your empty bank account isn't the problem, but merely the symptom of something far more sinister lurking in the depths of your psyche? You wake up each morning, check your balance, and feel that familiar knot in your stomach. The numbers stare back at you like cold, unforgiving judges. You tell yourself you're broke, that money slips through your fingers like water, that prosperity belongs to other people. The lucky ones, the connected ones, the ones who somehow cracked a code you've never been given. But what if I told you that your financial struggles have nothing to do with luck, connections, or even the economy itself? What if the reason money feels impossible to keep is because you're fighting an invisible war, a battle against parts of yourself you refuse to acknowledge? Carl Jung understood something that most financial advisors, self-help gurus, and economists completely miss. The unconscious mind doesn't just influence your dreams and relationships, it controls your relationship with money in ways that would terrify you if you could see them clearly. Your financial reality isn't shaped by market forces or opportunity alone. It's sculpted by shadow forces within your own psyche, unconscious beliefs that operate like hidden puppet strings, pulling you toward the same patterns of scarcity, self-sabotage, and financial chaos, again and again. You think you want wealth. You think you're working toward abundance. But somewhere in the darkness of your unconscious mind, another part of you, a part you've never met, is working just as hard to keep you exactly where you are. This isn't about positive thinking or manifestation. This is about psychological archaeology, digging into the buried layers of your financial psyche to uncover the programming that has been shaping your reality since childhood. Consider this: every financial decision you make, from the coffee you buy to the salary you accept, passes through an invisible filter of unconscious programming. Your spending habits, earning patterns, and relationship with abundance are all expressions of deeper psychological forces that most people never examine. What you call being broke might actually be your psyche's way of maintaining psychological equilibrium, keeping you in familiar territory, even if that territory is painful. The shadow, as Jung called it, isn't evil. It's simply everything about yourself that you've learned to reject, deny, or hide. And when it comes to money, your shadow carries some of the most powerful programming of all. Maybe it whispers that you don't deserve wealth. Maybe it insists that money corrupts good people. Maybe it holds the belief that struggle is noble, that ease is suspicious, that financial success means betraying your authentic self. These aren't conscious thoughts. They're deeper than that. They're the psychological DNA of your financial reality, inherited from generations of ancestors who survived by believing that resources were scarce, that wanting more was dangerous, that financial security was for other people. Your blocks and shadow self work together in ways that create the illusion of external limitation when the real barriers exist entirely within your own unconscious mind. Here's what makes this particularly unsettling: you can't fight what you can't see. You can budget, hustle, invest, and strategize all you want. But if your unconscious mind is programmed for scarcity, it will find ways to maintain that familiar state. Self-sabotage becomes inevitable when part of your psyche believes that financial success threatens your survival, your identity, or your belonging. The journey ahead isn't about learning new management techniques. It's about becoming conscious of the psychological forces that have been shaping your financial reality from the shadows. It's about discovering that what makes people feel unworthy isn't a character flaw. It's unprocessed psychological material that can be integrated and transformed. If these words are stirring something deep within you, a recognition, perhaps, or an uncomfortable truth, then you're ready for this exploration. Consider joining this community of truth seekers who understand that real transformation happens in the depths, not the shallows. Subscribe, and let's continue mapping the hidden territories of your psyche together. But first, we need to understand how deeply these shadows run, and how the very masks we wear to appear successful might be the very things keeping us trapped in cycles that we mistake for progress. Those unconscious beliefs don't just hide in the darkness of your private thoughts. They dress themselves up in designer clothes and drive expensive cars. Walk into any corporate office, scroll through social media, or sit in an upscale cafe, and you'll witness one of humanity's most elaborate performances, the theater of success. Designer clothes, luxury cars, expensive vacations, all carefully curated props in a show that most performers can barely afford to maintain. You see it everywhere. The colleague who drives a BMW but secretly lives paycheck to paycheck. The friend who posts exotic vacation photos while her credit cards max out behind the scenes. The neighbor with the perfect lawn and expensive renovations who lies awake at night calculating minimum payments. They look wealthy, but wealth is more than what meets the eye. This is what Jung called the persona, your social mask, the version of yourself you present to the world. When it comes to money, your persona might project success, confidence, and abundance. But lurking beneath this carefully crafted surface lies the shadow, your hidden fears, insecurities, and the raw truth about your reality. The tragedy isn't that people wear masks, it's that they've confused the mask for their actual face. They've become so invested in appearing prosperous that they've lost touch with what genuine stability actually feels like. The persona demands expensive clothes, but the shadow knows the credit card bills are mounting. The persona posts about success, but the shadow experiences anxiety every time the phone rings, fearing it might be a creditor. Here's where the blindness becomes dangerous. When you're performing wealth rather than building it, every decision serves the wrong master. You're not asking, will this help me become secure? You're asking, will this help me look secure? The difference between these two questions is the difference between authentic prosperity and elaborate poverty disguised as success. Your persona might convince others that you're doing well, but your shadow knows the truth. It knows about the sleepless nights, the mounting debt, the careful choreography required to maintain appearances. The shadow holds your authentic relationship with money, the fear, the confusion, the deep-seated beliefs that wealth is somehow dangerous or that you don't deserve it. The most sophisticated sabotage happens when your persona and shadow are at war. Your persona wants to appear successful, so you spend money you don't have on things you don't need to impress people you don't even like. Meanwhile, your shadow, carrying all your unconscious programming, ensures that genuine wealth remains elusive. You can't build real security while you're busy performing fake security. This psychological split creates what I call prosperity blindness. You become so focused on the external symbols of wealth that you lose sight of the internal foundations that make wealth possible. You chase status instead of stability. You prioritize image over substance. You mistake spending for earning, consumption for creation, appearance for reality. The cruel irony is that the very behaviors designed to make you appear wealthy are the behaviors that keep you poor. The expensive car payment that strains your budget. The designer clothes that prevent you from investing. The lavish dinners that replace building an emergency fund. Each choice serves the persona while starving the shadow of what it actually needs: security, genuine self-worth, and authentic abundance. But here's what most people miss. Your persona isn't just hurting your bank account, it's blocking your ability to develop a mature, healthy relationship with money itself. When you're constantly performing wealth, you never learn to actually create it. When you're busy managing impressions, you're not managing cash flow. When you're focused on looking successful, you're not focused on becoming successful. This is why so many people feel confused about money. They know they should be doing better, but they can't figure out why they keep making the same costly mistakes. They read advice, set budgets, make plans, but their unconscious patterns remain unchanged because they've never addressed the deeper psychological splits that drive their behavior. The path forward isn't about abandoning your desire for nice things or living like a monk. It's about becoming conscious of when your persona is driving your decisions and learning to align your external choices with your internal health. It's about building wealth from the inside out, rather than the outside in. Yet even when you recognize these persona-driven patterns, another layer of unconscious programming remains active, one that's far more subtle and dangerous than mere image management. That recognition of your masks might have stirred something uncomfortable in you. Maybe you've seen yourself in those examples: the expensive purchases meant to project success, the careful choreography of appearing prosperous while anxiety gnaws at your insides. Maybe you receive a bonus, a raise, or even save up a decent amount. For a brief moment, you can breathe. You can see possibility. You can imagine what security might actually feel like. And then, almost as if someone else takes control of your hands, you make a series of decisions that put you right back where you started. The expensive impulse purchase you can't explain. The investment opportunity that was obviously too good to be true. the sudden urge to lend money to people who never pay you back, the mysterious way bills multiply just when you thought you had it figured out. You tell yourself these are isolated incidents, bad luck, or poor timing. But deep down, you sense something else is happening, something that feels almost intentional. Welcome to the Shadow's approach to management. Your unconscious mind has its own relationship with money, and that relationship might be very different from what your conscious mind thinks it wants. While you're consciously trying to build wealth, your shadow might be working just as hard to maintain familiar patterns of scarcity, struggle, and limitation. This isn't because your shadow is malicious, it's because your shadow is protective. Somewhere in your psychological depths, there are beliefs that feel absolutely true to your survival system. Maybe you learned that having money makes you a target. Maybe you internalized that wealthy people are selfish or corrupt. Maybe your psyche holds the conviction that struggle builds character, while ease makes you soft and vulnerable. These beliefs don't live in your rational mind where you can debate them. They live in your body, in your nervous system, in the ancient parts of your brain that prioritize survival over success. From this deeper level, self-sabotage isn't sabotage at all. It's protection. Your unconscious mind would rather keep you poor and safe than rich and vulnerable. This protective mechanism expresses itself through patterns that seem random but are actually quite predictable. The feast and famine cycle, where periods of abundance are always followed by periods of scarcity. The tendency to create emergencies just when things start stabilizing. The uncanny ability to find reasons why you can't pursue opportunities that might significantly improve your situation. Consider how this plays out in everyday life. You finally decide to start that business, but then you discover 17 reasons why the timing isn't quite right. You get offered a higher paying position, but something about it feels off, so you stay in your comfortable, underpaid role. You create a budget and stick to it for weeks, then mysteriously blow it all in a single afternoon of necessary purchases. Each incident seems logical in isolation. There were valid reasons for your choices. The timing really wasn't perfect. There were legitimate concerns about that job. You really did need those things you bought. But viewed as a pattern, these incidents reveal something much deeper. A psychological system designed to maintain equilibrium at a level that feels familiar, even if that level is uncomfortable. The most insidious aspect of self-sabotage is that it often disguises itself as wisdom, caution, or even morality. Your shadow doesn't tell you, "I'm going to keep you poor because I'm afraid of success." It tells you, "That opportunity seems risky," or "You shouldn't be greedy," or "Who are you to think you deserve more than what you have?" These internal voices can sound so reasonable, so mature, so spiritually evolved that you never question whether they might be fear masquerading as wisdom. But Jung understood that the shadow often speaks in the language of virtue while serving the cause of limitation. Breaking free from these patterns requires something more sophisticated than willpower or positive thinking. It requires shadow integration, the conscious acknowledgement and dialogue with the parts of yourself that fear growth. You have to be willing to discover what your unconscious mind believes and why those beliefs might have been useful at some point in your development. Maybe you learned that wanting more was selfish because your family couldn't afford basics. Maybe you absorbed the belief that money corrupts because the wealthy people in your childhood were unkind. Maybe you internalized that struggle is noble because that's how the adults around you made sense of their difficulties. These beliefs made sense in their original context. They helped you navigate your early environment and maintain psychological safety. But now they're outdated software running in the background of your life, creating results that match old programming rather than current possibilities. The transformation happens not through fighting these patterns, but through understanding them. When you can see why your shadow fears success, you can begin to address those fears directly rather than acting them out indirectly through self-sabotage. You can thank your protective mechanisms for their service while consciously choosing different behaviors that serve your current goals rather than your childhood survival needs. But here's what makes this personal work even more challenging. These individual shadow patterns don't exist in isolation. They're constantly being fed and reinforced by invisible forces that surround you every day. Your personal shadows are like tributaries feeding into a much larger river, a collective unconscious that shapes entire societies. What if the psychological forces that keep you trapped in limitation are the same forces that power entire economies? Look around at the world we've created. A system where people work jobs they hate to buy things they don't need with money they don't have to impress people they don't like. Where the primary measure of economic health is how much people consume, not how much they save or invest. Where debt is so normalized that institutions offer credit to people who clearly can't afford it, then act surprised when defaults occur. This isn't an accident. This isn't a bug in the system. It's a feature. Modern consumer capitalism depends on psychological blindness to function. It requires people to remain unconscious of their deeper motivations, to mistake wants for needs, to confuse temporary pleasure with lasting satisfaction. The entire economic structure relies on what Jung called the collective unconscious, shared psychological patterns that operate below the threshold of individual awareness. Consider how advertising works. It doesn't just sell products, it sells solutions to psychological wounds you might not even know you have. Buy this car, and you'll feel powerful. Wear this brand, and you'll belong. Use this product, and you'll be worthy of love. The most effective marketing doesn't appeal to your rational mind. It speaks directly to your shadow, promising to heal the very insecurities that consumer culture created in the first place. This creates a psychological trap that's almost impossible to escape through individual effort alone. Your personal shadows are constantly being triggered and reinforced by a culture that profits from your unconsciousness. Every advertisement, every social media post, every cultural message about success and status is designed to keep you focused on external acquisition rather than internal development. The collective shadow manifests in shared beliefs that seem obviously true but are actually culturally constructed. The belief that more is always better. The assumption that your worth is measured by your net worth. The idea that scarcity is natural and abundance is suspicious. The conviction that competition is more natural than cooperation. These aren't universal human truths, they're specific cultural programming that serves specific economic interests. Other cultures at other times have organized around very different assumptions about wealth, value, and human worth. But when you're swimming in the water of consumer capitalism, it's almost impossible to see the water itself. Think about how this plays out in your daily life. You feel bad about yourself, so you buy something to feel better. The temporary relief convinces you that consumption is the solution to psychological discomfort. But the underlying issue remains unaddressed, so you need to buy something else, and something else, creating an endless cycle that generates profit for others while keeping you psychologically and financially trapped. The most sophisticated aspect of this collective shadow is how it makes individual shadow work seem impossible or irrelevant. When everyone around you is living beyond their means, your overspending seems normal. When everyone is working constantly to afford things they don't need, your stress seems inevitable. When everyone is performing prosperity instead of building it, the performance seems like the only option. Breaking free from the collective shadow requires more than individual insight. It requires conscious resistance to cultural programming that's specifically designed to bypass your conscious awareness. It means recognizing that many of your personal desires are actually implanted desires that serve economic systems rather than your authentic well-being. This doesn't mean becoming a hermit or rejecting all material goods. It means developing the psychological sophistication to distinguish between authentic desires and manufactured ones. It means building the capacity to choose your relationship with money consciously rather than having that relationship chosen for you by cultural forces that don't have your best interests in mind. The path forward involves both individual shadow work and collective consciousness raising. You have to heal your personal relationship while also recognizing the larger systems that make that healing more difficult. You have to become conscious of your own unconscious patterns while also seeing how those patterns are reinforced by the culture around you. This understanding of the collective forces at play brings us to the crucial question: how do you actually break free from both personal and cultural programming to build genuine wealth? Understanding your shadows, both personal and collective, is only the beginning. The real transformation begins when you start integrating these insights into practical action. This is where you stop being a victim of unconscious patterns and start becoming the conscious creator of your reality. Integration isn't about eliminating your shadow, It's about making it your ally in building authentic wealth. The first step in healing insecurity is brutally honest self-assessment. Not the kind where you beat yourself up for past mistakes, but the kind where you become genuinely curious about your unconscious patterns. Sit with your history and ask different questions. Instead of, "Why do I always mess up?" ask, "What is my behavior trying to protect me from?" Instead of, "Why can't I save money?" ask, "What does spending give me that I'm afraid I can't get any other way?" This shift in questioning reveals the positive intent behind seemingly destructive patterns. Maybe your overspending isn't just weakness. Maybe it's your psyche's way of ensuring that you don't accumulate enough wealth to become isolated from others. Maybe your resistance to earning more isn't just fear. Maybe it's your unconscious loyalty to family members who struggled. When you understand the psychological function of your patterns, you can begin to find healthier ways to meet those same underlying needs. If spending helps you feel connected to others, you can find non-financial ways to build connection. If staying poor helps you feel humble, you can explore how to maintain humility while still building wealth. True mindset transformation happens when you realize that money is not the enemy of your authentic self. Unconsciousness about money is the enemy. When you're conscious of your relationship with wealth, money becomes a tool for expressing your values rather than a force that controls your behavior. You can be wealthy and generous. You can be successful and humble. You can be secure and spiritually grounded. This integration process looks different for everyone, but it always involves 3 essential steps. First, acknowledging the shadow patterns without judgment. Second, understanding the protective function these patterns serve. Third, consciously choosing new behaviors that honor the underlying needs while serving your current goals. For some people, this might mean learning to receive money without guilt. For others, it might mean learning to save without panic. For others still, it might mean learning to invest without feeling like they're betraying their authentic values. The specific work depends on your specific shadow material, but the process remains the same. Making unconscious patterns conscious so you can choose your behavior rather than being chosen by it. Shadow-informed wealth building recognizes that sustainable prosperity must align with your psychological ecosystem. If your wealth is built on foundations that contradict your deeper values or trigger your unconscious fears, that wealth will either be unstable or will require so much psychological energy to maintain that it won't actually improve your quality of life. But when your choices emerge from genuine self-knowledge and conscious intention, money becomes what Jung called it at his best: neutral energy that amplifies whatever consciousness you bring to it. In the hands of consciousness, money serves growth, creativity, generosity, and authentic expression. In the hands of unconsciousness, money serves compulsion, fear, ego, and limitation. The ultimate goal isn't just to accumulate wealth, it's to develop the psychological maturity to handle wealth in ways that enhance rather than diminish your humanity. It's to become the kind of person who can be trusted with resources because you've done the inner work necessary to use those resources wisely. This is why psychological roots of poverty must be addressed alongside practical education. You can learn all the investment strategies and budgeting techniques in the world, but if your unconscious mind is programmed for scarcity, those techniques will either fail or succeed in ways that don't actually improve your life. True freedom isn't just having enough money. It's having a conscious relationship with money that allows you to use resources in service of your authentic development and genuine contribution to the world. It's money as servant rather than master, tool rather than identity, means rather than end. When you've integrated your shadow, something profound shifts. You stop being driven by unconscious compulsions and start being guided by conscious intentions. You stop trying to use money to fix psychological problems that money can't fix, and start using money for what money is actually good for: creating security, enabling generosity, and supporting the expression of your authentic gifts in the world. This is shadow-informed wealth, prosperity that emerges from psychological wholeness rather than fragmentation. Abundance that enhances your humanity rather than diminishing it. Success that serves your authentic development rather than compensating for your unconscious limitations. The journey into your shadow isn't comfortable, but it's the only path to genuine freedom. Each insight, each moment of uncomfortable recognition, each step toward consciousness creates space for a different kind of prosperity to emerge. What has this exploration revealed about your own relationship with money? What shadows are you ready to face? Share your discoveries in the comments below. Your courage to name your patterns might be exactly what someone else needs to recognize their own.